Something remarkable happened, something nobody saw coming when the season started. Indiana Fever fans, the same passionate supporters who cheered when Stephanie White came home to coach their team, started turning on her, and they weren't quiet about it. "I'm officially done with the Fever," one fan posted on social media. "Stephanie White is a horrible coach." Another wrote, "People are going to jump me, but Stephanie White isn't the coach to lead this Fever to a championship." This wasn't just a few disgruntled voices. This was a wave of frustration from a fan base that had waited years for their team to matter again. And now, with the 2026 season approaching, the question everyone's asking is whether Stephanie White's seat is getting warm. Because when Fever fans start mentioning names like Cheryl Miller as alternatives, you know the conversation has shifted. Let's talk about what happened, why it happened, and whether the whispers about White's future have any substance to them. To understand how we got here, you have to remember that Stephanie White wasn't some unknown quantity when Indiana hired her in November of 2024. This was a homecoming.
I'm just so proud of with this group is it doesn't matter who's on the floor, it doesn't matter who's on our roster. They give each other the freedom to be themselves. They empower one another to be themselves and to be the best version of themselves.
White played at Purdue, led them to a national championship in 1999, and was part of the Fever organization for years as both a player and assistant coach. She was there when they won the WNBA title in 2012. When the Fever brought her back from Connecticut, where she had won Coach of the Year in 2023, it felt like the perfect match. Indiana native, proven winner, someone who understood the pressure that comes with coaching Caitlin Clark. The expectations were sky high going into the 2025 season, and for a while, things looked promising. The Fever won the Commissioner's Cup championship in July, their first major trophy in years. They were competing, they were exciting to watch, and Clark was developing into exactly the superstar everyone predicted she would become.
It's special. I mean, there's very few people who get the opportunity to say that they have a logo and to make the impact that she makes, not just, I think, in the sport, but globally, just by being who she is.
Then everything changed when Clark went down with a groin injury. She would only play 13 games all season. And without their franchise player, the Fever season became a test of White's coaching abilities in ways nobody anticipated. The turning point came in mid-August. The Fever had lost 4 out of 5 games. Clark was still sidelined, and fans were watching their coach make decisions they couldn't understand. The complaints were specific. Fans pointed to White's rotation patterns, questioning why certain players were getting minutes while others sat. Lexi Hull, who many considered one of the hardest workers on the team, seemed to be in White's doghouse for reasons nobody could figure out. Late-game play calls weren't working. The offense looked stagnant without Clark running the show. "The Suns are one of the worst teams in the league," one frustrated fan wrote after a particularly painful loss. "But the mighty Stephanie White makes them look like prime Lakers." Insane coaching malpractice coming from Steph White.
I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy.
Now, coaching without your best player is never easy. Anyone who's followed basketball knows that. When you lose someone of Caitlin Clark's caliber, someone who averaged over 8 assists per game and was the engine of your entire offense, you're going to struggle. That's not a coaching failure. That's just reality. But fans weren't buying it. They looked at the roster White had and believed she should be getting more out of them. Aliyah Boston was there, a 2-time All-Star. Kelsey Mitchell, who had one of the best years of her career the season before. Natasha Howard, the Commissioner's Cup MVP, providing veteran leadership. On paper, this team should have been able to stay competitive even without Clark. The criticism grew louder on social media, which is where everything plays out these days.
First and foremost, they're good human beings. They're selfless, they're tough, they don't care who gets the credit, they don't care whose day it is.
Fans dissected every substitution pattern, every timeout decision, every post-game press conference comment. Some of it was fair analysis, some of it was just frustration looking for a target, but it was relentless. Stephanie White isn't the coach to lead this Fever to a championship, became a refrain you'd see repeated in different variations across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And once that narrative takes hold, it's hard to shake. What made it more complicated was White's own history with the organization. This was her second stint as Fever head coach. She had coached them before, from 2015 to 2016, taking them to the WNBA Finals in her first year. But she had also left. She went to Vanderbilt, then to Connecticut. Some fans wondered if she was just using Indiana as a stepping stone again. Others questioned whether she really had the long-term commitment to build something sustainable. Then there was the matter of how she got the job in the first place.
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul called every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively.
Christy Sides, the previous coach, had just led the Fever to their first playoff appearance in 8 years. Yes, they got swept in the first round. Yes, there were questions about her coaching, but she had exceeded expectations with a young team. The front office fired her anyway, and reports suggested they had already been in talks with White before Sides was even let go. That messy transition left a bad taste for some fans. And now, watching the team struggle in White's first season, those same fans were wondering if the organization had made a mistake. By the time the Fever finished the 2025 season at 24-20, making it to the semifinals before losing to Las Vegas in 5 games, the results looked respectable on paper. But the eye test told a different story for many supporters. They saw a team that should have done more, a coach who couldn't maximize her talent, and a wasted year in Caitlin Clark's prime.
I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Kelsey Mitchell, number one, is held or chucked on every freaking possession and never gets a call off the ball. I think Aliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league. She never gets a call. There's a double standard there, certainly.
White addressed the media throughout these difficult stretches, always measured and professional. When she made the decision to shut down Clark for the rest of the season rather than rush her back, she talked about prioritizing long-term health over short-term wins. It's frustrating, she admitted to reporters, but she believed it was the right call. To her credit, White never made excuses. She didn't throw players under the bus. She took responsibility when things went wrong and gave credit when things went right. But in today's sports world, being a good person doesn't always save your job when results don't meet expectations. And that brings us to the speculation that started bubbling up in fan circles. If the Fever were to make another coaching change, who would they target? One name keeps coming up in these conversations: Cheryl Miller. Now let's be absolutely clear about what we know and what we don't know. There have been no reports from credible sources suggesting the Fever are considering a coaching change. There have been no leaks from the front office indicating they're unhappy with White. As of late November 2025, Stephanie White is the head coach of the Indiana Fever, period. But that hasn't stopped fans from dreaming about what a Cheryl Miller hire might look like. And honestly, on paper, it makes a certain kind of sense. Miller is arguably the greatest women's basketball player who never played in the WNBA, simply because she was born too early. She won 3 Naismith Player of the Year awards at USC, 2 national championships, and was so dominant that she remains a legend to this day. Her brother Reggie spent his entire Hall of Fame career with the Indiana Pacers, making the Miller name synonymous with Indiana basketball. She coached the Phoenix Mercury when the WNBA first launched, from 1997 to 2000. She's been out of coaching at the professional level since then, but she coached Clark at the 2024 WNBA All-Star Game, and the chemistry between them was obvious.
Coach, you are 3-0 facing elimination in those playoffs. What can you take from Game 3?
Don't say stuff like that. What? You can just...
What can you take from Atlanta's Game 3 to help you avoid Game 5?
I mean, I think the biggest thing for us is again, like we've been through everything.
Clark and the rest of Team WNBA responded to Miller's coaching, pulling off an upset victory over Team USA. After that All-Star game, fans started posting videos and comments suggesting Miller should replace Christy Sides. Cheryl Miller, Aliyah Boston, and Caitlin Clark would be absolute magic together, one fan wrote at the time. The sentiment was real, so when frustration with White reached its peak in August 2025, those same fans started mentioning Miller's name again. The logic went like this: Miller has the basketball IQ, she has the credibility, she has history with Clark, and she has the Indiana connection through her brother. Why not bring in someone who could command instant respect and bring a fresh perspective? The counter-argument is obvious. Miller hasn't coached in the WNBA in over 2 decades. The game has changed dramatically since then. She's 60 years old now and has shown no indication she wants to return to the grind of professional coaching. Just because someone was great as a player doesn't mean they'd be great coaching in today's league. But fans aren't always concerned with those practicalities. They see a legend, they see potential, and they see an alternative to what isn't currently working. The broader question here is about the pressure cooker that comes with coaching Caitlin Clark. Whoever has that job is going to face scrutiny unlike anything most WNBA coaches have dealt with. Clark brings attention, ratings, and expectations that can suffocate even experienced coaches. Christy Sides found that out. She got the Fever to the playoffs and still lost her job. Stephanie White, a Coach of the Year winner, faced a fan revolt in her first season despite winning the Commissioner's Cup and making the semifinals. If she were to be replaced, whoever comes next would inherit the same impossible standards. The Fever front office has shown they're willing to make bold moves. They fired Sides after a successful season. They poached White from Connecticut. They're not afraid to make changes if they think it'll help them win a championship. But they also know that constant turnover isn't the answer. At some point, you have to commit to a vision and let it develop. Clark is expected to be fully healthy for the 2026 season. She and White barely got to work together in 2025, with Clark only appearing in 13 games. Next season will be the real test of whether this partnership can work. The front office knows that. The question is whether they'll give White the chance to prove herself with a healthy roster, or whether one difficult season is enough to spark another coaching search. As we head into the 2026 season, Stephanie White is still the coach of the Indiana Fever. But in professional sports, job security is always temporary. Fans have made their frustrations known. Names like Cheryl Miller are floating around in speculation, and the pressure to deliver results with Caitlin Clark in her prime has never been higher. Whether White survives depends on what happens next season. But one thing's for certain, Indiana's fan base expects excellence, and they're not afraid to demand changes when they don't see it. What do you think? Should the Fever stick with Stephanie White and give her a fair chance with a healthy Caitlin Clark? Or is it time to start considering alternatives? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more WNBA coverage.